Many people ask me why I'm still smiling when their portfolio looks like a crime scene, and I tell them the truth. It is because I'm not playing the same game as everyone else. I'm not chasing pumps. I'm not selling in a panic. I'm watching the quiet moves, the foundational shifts, the ones that the mainstream media and 99% of the internet completely misses. And today, my friends, we just witnessed a massive update from the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, that is like the central bank of central banks. And if you're holding XRP or HEC, any asset that is actually building the future, you need to understand why this is a game changer. But first, let's look at the market, because I'm sure a lot of you are looking at the market and saying, wow, no big difference. The market is still selling off. And yeah, definitely, the market is still choppy. This is what the 1 year looks like. And this is what the last 30 days looks like, where we are essentially retesting the lows from the 23rd just recently. We're sitting at about roughly $2.5 trillion market cap. Bitcoin's back down to 74.4 thousand. XRP is trailing right around 1.31, and the rest of the market, of course, is having a pretty big pullback. We did see some news with Stellar and a few other altcoins, which is why you might see some that are up, like XLM is up 10% today, which makes a lot of sense. But beyond that, like, there really isn't much gains. In the top 100, I mean, outside of XLM, which is an outlier because of the news today, there really is nothing happening. In the top 100, most of the top 100 in the last 24 hours is red, as you guys can see. And, it definitely is not an exciting time to be an altcoin holder because of just how the market has been. But I will say, it is very good for those that have been accumulating stable coins and waiting for some deeper buy orders to be hit, because I do think that we are about to get a major drop on some altcoins, which allows us to buy in the deeper red. Just taking a quick look at Bitcoin before we really get into the news. I do suspect that we're probably getting that major pullback that I was talking about for a bit of time here, especially as we were getting kind of closer to resistance, up at about roughly 82,000. And that level that we were talking about was roughly about 68.8 thousand to about 72,071.8. This is major support and also resistance, going all the way back here to 2024. It is also a major level from 2021. The all-time high, and yeah, it would be a perfect retest of that. Just a tap of it, maybe even wick down a little bit below it. That is totally fine. But, I do think that this is where we will most likely get a nice reaction on Bitcoin. I think that this is where buyers start to step in and really take Bitcoin back to, some of the prior highs here. And what I mean by that is mainly 82,000. And then if we could finally break over that on the weekly, then yeah, the next key level here would be about roughly 93.7 thousand. And if we manage to break over that as well, then we're looking at, back to 100,000 plus on Bitcoin. But so far, I know that everyone's kind of looking at this and, they're getting pretty upset about it. But so far, this is basically what we wanted to see. Anyways, also, if we do retest this zone here and we get a strong reaction to the point where we break over the prior high and we continue to the upside, that basically invalidates something like this happening here, where we just kind of free fall back down below 60,000 and, maybe even retest roughly 54.5 thousand. So that is why we want to see if this is going to hold up or not, if we're going to see that reaction here. And I think that that is where, most of the market will start to wake up again, and we kind of get that second life with XRP. I'm still expecting, if we do see Bitcoin dropping that low, I'm still expecting this to most likely retest the prior wick. Going back to the beginning of February, it would be a just retest of those lows. Only reason why I say that this is a possibility is because of us retesting major weekly support here and actually wicking below it currently. So we're at like that critical level on XRP right now, where, it is kind of like a make or break moment. And it seems as though we're going to most likely get a retest of these lows, but I wouldn't be too bearish right now. In the market, I know that it is definitely not exciting right now in the market, but this is just your typical, price action on altcoins when Bitcoin is having, a major pullback or so. Like I said, a few things are outliers, like XLM with the news today, but beyond that, I wouldn't be, too scared at all. Now, I do want to take you guys back because I have brought up like the CPMI group quite a bit with Ripple, and back in August of 2023, Ripple did join the BIS task force for cross-border payments. This was a month after we got the XRP lawsuit announcement that XRP was not a security from Judge Torres. But back in August 2023, that is when Ripple did join the CPMI group. Now, we talked about this on multiple occasions. Obviously, yes, Ripple is a key player here, as you guys can let me zoom out so that you guys can see it. Here we have Ripple on the bottom, and yeah, I mean, listen, this task force is definitely big for cross-border payments, and it coming from the BIS is definitely very important to take note of, especially considering the fact that we just got a huge update from the BIS. Now, for those that don't know about the, BIS, who exactly are they? Well, they are pretty much the central bank of central banks. This is the home of like majority of the central banks in the world, and that is why the BIS is such an important name. When it comes back to, pretty much anything that they're doing, and the fact that Ripple is tied back to the BIS definitely is another big vote of confidence around how big of a player Ripple is becoming, and also how big of a piece Ripple is to the new system. But to build on top of that, I bring up the BIS, because we just got a big update. Now this is new. The BIS concludes Project Agora, finding tokenized central bank reserves could make cross-border payments faster and safer, so the New York Fed, Bank of England, and Bank of Japan now move towards real value testing on blockchain rails. Now this is very crazy to think of because again, like I said, they are the central bank of central banks. They did have a full, sort of trial period, if you will, for Project Agora, and it is all based around tokenized central bank reserves. And, this is the green light for pretty much all central banks, which is why you have the New York Fed, the Bank of England, and even the Bank of Japan moving towards real value testing. On blockchain rails, it is crazy how all of this is happening. At the same time, with clarity on the cusp of passing, we also have so many big players launching products around tokenization. This is just a crazy, crazy time period for crypto. And of course, yes, we do have Bloomberg, the Bank for International Settlements, and a cohort of partners will soon start testing a new prototype for digital cross-border payments. With real value transactions, we do see from Chad Steinraber everything all at once, because we do have the BIs and banks build a blockchain cross-border payments prototype, which is why when we go back to the CPMI group has a ton of banks tied back to it, and of course, yes, Ripple is on here, with even Swift. It is kind of crazy to think of, but that is how embedded Ripple actually is already. But to build on top of this, what exactly does Chad mean by everything all at once? Well, there is definitely a few things. Could it just mean clarity's on clarity is on the cusp of passing with, now the BS, and also major banks building out blockchain cross-border payment prototypes and also tokenization platforms? Yeah, that is definitely crazy. Or is it also the fact that we are seeing this at the same time that Swift announced their blockchain-based shared ledger, that they have been, reaching major milestone after milestone, with also a ton of major banks, which this happened on March 30th. Is it just that? Or also, is it the fact that the Bank of England just released their draft regarding their stable coin rules for next month as the UK pushes tokenization and regulated stable coins? Because this is going to happen next month. Yeah, I feel like everything is converging all at once, and I know what you guys are going to say. Wow, all this stuff is happening, but XRP is still here. Yeah, well, think about what is happening. Like, we are now starting to see this project move from, trying and testing to actual value being moved over rails. Like, this is very, very bullish to see. But also just remember back on May 18th, we talked about this post from Nate Garshi, where he outlined, not sure how everyone, can appreciate how fast major securities markets are heading towards full tokenization. Because again, like, people are not aware of how fast things are moving at this point. Everyone now involved, regulators, exchanges like the NYS, and even NASDAQ, the DTCC, everyone. The SEC expected to release innovation exemption for tokenized stocks as soon as this week. Now we know that that got delayed a little bit, but all these players are still here. You got to think about it like this. The DTCC, going back to Chad's point, everything all at once. The DTCC starts in July with their tokenization push at the same exact time that we now have the BIS. And banks building a blockchain cross-border payments prototype with tokenization at the forefront of this, with tokenized bank, central bank reserves at the same time that Swift is moving towards blockchain and tokenized deposits. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of crazy to think of, but to really kind of get in depth on what exactly is happening here with the Bank for International Settlements. And pretty much this Project Agora, they did announce on the 27th, today at 9:11 a.m., that Project Agora from the BI's Innovation Hub, the IIF, and 40-plus financial institutions shows how tokenization and programmable technologies can enhance cross-border payments. By the way, this IIF, the Global Association of the Financial Industry, I think that this is the Institute of International Finance. They're actually partnered with a few players in the space, even Hedera, so definitely take note of that. But if we're looking at all the names here, they do have the full list. I think it is on here, maybe I'm wrong. Or, yeah, it is here. These are the 40 institutional players tied back to this. So this got originally announced back in 2020. 4 got updated in 2020. 5, we do have Amina Bank, which by the way is partnered up with Ripple. Banco BV Bank of Center, by the way. Also another partner, Bonert Bank Can. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. I'd probably butcher it. BBVA, also a Ripple partner. BNP Paribas, also a Ripple partner. BNE, also a Ripple partner. CaixaBank City Commerce. Bank Credit Agricole Deutsche Bank. Also, by the way, another major partner of Ripple's, also working with some other blockchain players in the space. Clearing Euroclear, also Euroclear has ties back to Ripple, as well as a few other names. FNBO Group, ABPCE Hana Bank. HSBC, by the way, another Ripple partner, also tokenizing on the XRP ledger, IBK JP Morgan Chase Bank. Also connection with JP Morgan through, of course, G Treasury, KB Cookman Bank. Lloyds Banking Group, by the way, major partner with Hedera, tokenizing with Hedera with Artix. MasterCard partnered up with both, I believe, Ripple with XRP, and I know that there is some connections back to Hedera, and then also Mizuho Bank connections back to Ripple. Monks, MUFG Bank connections back to Ripple. NatWest Group. I mean, there is so many. SBI Shinzi Bank. SBI major Ripple partner. Major Ripple supporter, Shinhan Bank major Hedera partner. 6 Digital Exchange major ties back to even Quant. Center Chartered also major ties back to Ripple and XRP. I mean, guys, there is some crazy names on here, and it just goes to show you like how embedded the traditional system already is. But if we go over here, we have Project Agora, exploring tokenization of wholesale cross-border payments. So Project Agora is a public-private collaboration that aims to test the desirability, feasibility, and viability of a multi-currency shared programmable platform for wholesale cross-border payments. It is based on a concept initially proposed by the BIS cross-border payments today are burdened by structural inefficiencies that make them slow, costly, and opaque. You know, Ripple has been saying this for years now. Complex sequential processes and networks delays transactions, increase cost, limit end-to-end visibility, and silo liquidity, complicating cash and treasury management. Together, these frictions weigh on global trade and financial activity, constraining innovation and growth. Now, yes, Project Agora, we've been tracking this project for a very long time, and we now see that by tokenizing, recording central bank reserves and commercial bank deposits, on a shared platform, Project Agora seeks to enable atomic settlement of wholesale cross-border transactions while preserving the safety, trust, and reliability of the existing banking system in turn. A Project Agora-like solution could open new possibilities for businesses, such as conditional or always-on payments, while maintaining the safety, reliability, and soundness of banking payments. And yeah, with, 40-plus players here, it brings together 8 central banks, including those of 5 major reserve currencies, and over 40 leading financial institutions convened by the IIF in a public-private partnership prototype. We already kind of went over it a little bit, but the main thing here is that it was successful. Like, we did see that this was pretty successful, which is awesome. Now, can we for certain know that Ripple and XRP are tied back to this? Well, no, I don't think that we can find, any major connections here outside of, the CPMI group. But I will say this, okay, the main bread and butter here is the fact that these networks are already starting to win big. The XRP ledger is up big in terms of tokenization. Just taking a quick look at the list here, in the last 30 days, we know XRP is 3rd on the list. Yes, Solana is still doing. I think that Solana is definitely going to be a big winner here too, but outside of that, I'm mainly looking at XLM, XRP. Those are I would say the top chains for, these types of use cases. And yes, Ethereum is still number 1, but I don't believe for, much longer. I really do think that we're going to start to see a big shift here. But it all starts with one big thing as well. And this is the number 1 thing that I've always said. If you really want to know if your network is going to win in this area, understand that custody is so important, which is why when I go back to Ripple, I go back to April 23rd, where we have here, without secure compliant custody, every digital asset strategy, including payments, tokenization, and staking, becomes harder to scale. Custody is the governance layer that everything else runs on. This is why Ripple custody is so important for the entire stack. Like we already know under solutions custody, we know that custody is the start to everything. And after you have custody locked in, you could start to look at tokenization. Under tokenization, we know that the XRP ledger is the house for Ripple. They know that this is basically the network that institutional players can trust, that they want to tap in with. Is it the only network that will see tokenized value? No. I mean, listen, we are already starting to see many networks being chosen for tokenization. But I will say this, Ripple has so many connections back to the BIs from the CPMI group. Also major trials prior as well. Also XRP mentioned on a lot of documents from the BIs, and even players at the BIs. The main thing that I want you guys to understand here with the BIS and this project is that we are now seeing for the first time ever a clear confirmation that yes, tokenization is changing the way the system works. Tokenization is fundamentally the next major step in terms of the evolution of finance as a whole, this is happening now. And I get that we are so tired of the negative price action and things like that, but I want you guys to realize people don't invest in 2026 into Amazon stock. They don't expect to get rich from Amazon in the next 6 months, the next year, okay? And I say that because 1 year ago, It is a little under 1 year ago actually right now, but last July is when XRP hit its peak. So far, I'm fine waiting a year. Like we are only from that point. Okay, we are only 315 days out, not even a single year. Just for reference, to bottom out completely before the next move, it took 1,295 days from XRP's last peak to actually do this move. This 315 days is absolutely nothing, and I get it. Price action is negative. Well, guess what? Price action was also negative. Back in 2020, too, the difference here is that we are seeing the clearest confirmation that the new system is being built. Tokenization is a key piece of this. You don't get that without custody, which Ripple has acquired the biggest players in custody, a Medico for this. That institutional players trust. I will say this, Ripple is operating on a completely different level than most of these other networks. Or I shouldn't say networks, of these other companies. And the XRP ledger as a network is so far ahead of majority of these other ones as well, because we've been seeing constant upgrades and development on the XRP ledger for over the last, roughly it is like 14 years. So in my opinion, when we really think about what is happening here, I do think that Ripple and XRP are definitely star players here. I also think that XLM is going to be a big player, Hedera is going to be a big player, Quant as well. There's a lot of great, networks and, projects in the space, even Canton as well. Canton is a great project to look into, but with that being said, this is definitely a big update. I'm very happy about it. I think that everything is happening all at once. Pretty much every single big player is talking about tokenization, stable coins, digital payments, pretty much converging traded. The only problem is that we don't have the price action, but I'm sure that the price action is going to show up. Once everything is in place, we still have, some time on clarity. I wouldn't get too upset about price action and too fixated on price action. Trust me, it will return, but for now, we just got to be patient and make it through this storm. Stay boring, stay patient. Peace.